Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, well, the bye week has come and gone, as has the NFL trade deadline. Now, this banged-up Los Angeles Chargers football team, they're going in with this with some needs, right? They need a wide receiver pretty desperately, among other positions, but don't worry, they also had a plan.
Nothing.
The shell has spoken!
Bolt fam, that's the worst thing that we could have done, sit on our hands, and that's exactly what we did. No coaching changes, no trades, minimal free agent signings. It's pretty rough out there, man. And I'm sure I speak for a lot of us in saying that I'm pretty disappointed. I felt this was a pretty important season in terms of making moves in the middle of the season, addressing issues right now to help this team smooth over just a tremendous amount of injuries, and yet the Chargers decided to do nothing. So that's kind of what this video is today. Things that disappointed the Director. But don't worry, it's not going to be a complete downer. We do have some good news around the corner. The whole season's still in front of us. We're 4-3. There's ways the Chargers can make this work, as well as maybe even a developing story here with Brandin Cooks. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Brandin Cooks situation, but there's a legitimate shot that the Chargers could go after him post-release. We'll get into more of that here in just a second. But first, I did want to recognize where we are as a team and maybe what the Chargers can do going forward, as well as maybe my brand new record outlook for the future as of right now. But before we do get into it, guys, I do want to shout out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Of course, we do have Thursday Night Football tonight. Very important game, Eagles and Texans. And again, this is going to be very important going forward for the Brandin Cooks situation. More on that in just a second. But if you guys want to get in on the action, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. I will certainly putting a couple of slips in tonight. Should be a lot of fun. And again, it's one where Sundays get that much more exciting. Underdog Fantasy, code DIRECTOR. Before we do get started, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one, baby. It's rant season. Lights, camera, action. A Chargers 2022 bye week rant. Again, it's not going to be a complete downer. There are exciting things to talk about in terms of the Chargers improving going forward here, including the Brandin Cooks storyline. But first, I wanted to jump into where the Chargers are right now. To better our situation and to better ourselves as a team, we got to figure out what's going on with the roster right now, because that's a pretty big deal in terms of the health of this team. And it's been a big story all season. It might continue to be a big story going forward. So where are we at with the injuries, Director? Let's start with the bad news, okay? I'm one of those guys. Let's just give me the bad news first. So maybe I'm okay and excited about the good news. Well, the bad news is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen re-aggravated his hamstring injury again during the bye week. This one's gutting, man. The Chargers so desperately needed a wide receiver to come back. Even with Mike Williams, active on game day, Keenan Allen was sorely missed, especially on third downs. We went from maybe getting Keenan Allen back to maybe no Keenan Allen back this season at all. Now, again, I'm just speculating, but that hamstring injury, dude, that thing has been lingering all year. We don't know what the return window is anymore. I felt that he would have been back in a couple of weeks ago, and now here we are, going into week 9. Still no Keenan Allen on the field, which just really, man, that is such a downer. I'm seeing a lot of people, maybe a little down on Keenan Allen now in terms of not remembering what he brings to the team. This is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, so to have him absent is definitely going to hurt the Chargers going forward. We really hope and pray that he can make his return soon, but as of right now, I would say his return window is indefinite. We just do not know what's going on with that hamstring injury, and we hope that he makes his return soon. Also, we're looking at Mike Williams with the ankle sprain. He's looking to be trending positive in terms of it could have been worse. Now, I don't know if I have anything new to report in terms of when he's going to be back. I think it was something like a 4-week injury, which would put him back his return window. And again, I'm just spitballing here, okay? I would say his return window is somewhere between weeks 11 and 13. So Mike Williams might be back sooner than later. The other guy that's exciting to return return on the horizon is going to be Joey Bosa. I should have gotten pictures for all these guys. Joey Bosa, he's back in the building. I think as of a few days ago, he's rehabbing that groin injury. Groin injuries, that does not sound fun. But he is back in the building with the Chargers, and it seems like he's trending towards coming back a little bit later in the season. Again, he actually has the same return window in my mind of week 11 through 13. That would put him, what was the mark? 8 to 10 weeks away from return after week 3. So week 11 through 13, we should be seeing Mike Williams and maybe Joey Bosa back around the same time. So those are some good news things right there. Another shred of good news I'll say is that Josh Palmer and Donald Parham have both cleared concussion protocol, so both those guys should be suiting up on Sunday versus the Falcons. But also, we do have to tack on there that Dustin Hopkins, Taylor Bertolette, I think is how you say his name, the backup kicker, both those guys are injured, as well as Chris Rumph and Jerry Tillery. Those are things to monitor. The Chargers, again, slowly crawling out of the pit of despair in terms of injury, but it does look rough out there, especially a wide receiver. And this is why we were all screaming during the bye week in the trade deadline. Chargers, go get a wide receiver. As a matter of fact, they still have an opportunity to do so. We'll talk more about Brandin Cooks a little later, but there are guys that you can go roster right now to help this situation. If they don't make a signing soon, their wide receivers are going to remain as such. Josh Palmer, Carter, Bandy. These are the top 3 wide receivers all of a sudden for the Chargers, and that's if Josh Palmer can stay on the field. Again, knock on wood for all of these guys. And with what? Atlanta, San Francisco, Kansas City, Arizona, all these guys up next, it's about to get rough out there. The season, dude, and the schedule, I would say the first half of games, manageable. The second half of games, it's about to get a little bit steep out there, and that's exactly why the Chargers need their stars back sooner or later. But you know what? The Chargers do have a chance of getting Bosa and Mike Williams back to face, let's say, the Chiefs in Week 11. That could certainly turn things around both on offense and defense. So just keep those windows in Weeks 11 through 13 in the back of your brains. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The bye week bide. That's what we're going to call it. You guys know what bide means? It means to sit and do nothing, to wait, right? Wait for your opportunity, or sometimes just wait for nothing. The bye week bide. Now, let me start things off by saying this season saw a record amount of deadline trades. 20 moves before November 1st. That is almost unheard of. It is unheard of. That was the record. That is the record for moves on the before the trade deadline, and that's absolutely crazy. The Chargers did make a couple of moves, right? Not in terms of trades, but, we signed Jeremiah Tauchu. Yay, welcome back to L. Or I should say, welcome back to the Chargers. San Diego in the past. Welcome back to the Chargers, Jeremiah Tauchu. And Michael Jackett, cornerback for the practice squad. They did make moves, but nothing that's really going to help this team immediately on Sunday versus the Falcons, right? And this makes no sense to me, especially for this year in particular. The whole narrative of the offseason was, we're going all in, baby. We're taking that Rams, template. We're running with it. We're signing big guys like Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson. We're throwing down the gauntlet. This all-in mentality. This is the Los Angeles Chargers in 2022. Well, the Chargers threw down all right. They committed a lot of resources. It just hasn't worked out. Mainly due to injuries. I know the J.C. Jackson situation's a little bit up and down. I thought he was starting to bounce back, but he got injured. Injury's a big, big deal this season, even with the Chargers throwing down. And I get it. We spent a lot of money. Too much money, if you ask some people, and it didn't work out. That blows. But this doesn't mean that we can't fix the problems and the issues revolving around the unfortunate start due to these injuries. I bet you guys the Chargers ownership is not too happy right now, right? I'd imagine there's some serious pressure to get things trending back in the right direction, especially with all the money on the line this season now on the roster. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of heat. And from my perspective, I feel like the Chargers offense is 100% the issue right now. And what's crazier to me is that I feel like a few moves, just a few moves, could help remedy this. It could help fix the issues that we're seeing on offense right now. One of them being Joe. We'll get to that in a minute. But the other being personnel. Personnel's such a big problem for the Chargers right now. And it's really not going to ask that much, or it's not going to take that much to get things back on track, in my opinion. The Chargers are missing their top 3 wide receivers. At least they were as of a few days ago with Josh Palmer. But even with Palmer returning, we're leaning on our 3rd round pick, Josh Palmer, to carry the passing offense? A guy that just still developing, does have the upside, but that's a lot to put on a guy. Versus, let's say they have A.J. Terrell back with the Atlanta. I don't know, man. I don't know about that. And with the offense struggling, even with Mike Williams on the roster a couple of weeks ago, it's about to get bad out there with how the Chargers wide receiver room looks today. It's bad, man. If the team had truly committed, right? Truly committed to not giving up, we would have seen a move for a wide receiver. I don't know what they're thinking. I heard something about, they had confidence in the health of their team, and then we hear about Keenan Allen not coming back. We hear about Mike Williams, and it's really, really just backfiring on the Chargers. That gamble to bet on the health of Keenan Allen really bit us in the butt. And again, it doesn't take that much. To reiterate, I think the Chargers need a wide receiver. And from where I stand, I think 2 wide receivers is what we need. We need 2 fast, speed wide receivers. This would completely transform the offense in my mind. Again, some people don't like comparisons. I'm going to do it anyway. It's the easiest way to get the point across. Look at the Miami Dolphins, man. And again, people don't like this because of Tua. Don't have a problem with Tua. Tua's great, okay? I get the circumstances. That's ancient history. I like Tua. And look at that offense. Look at the Miami Dolphins right now. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Those guys have been unreal. And that's with Tua Tagovailoa, who does not have a cannon like Justin Herbert. That speed, even with the lack of a quarterback with a big arm, has really been carrying that offense. And they've been a threat, man. We're playing the Miami Dolphins, in December. And you bet your butt we're not going to be playing close to the line of scrimmage. We're going to be worried about Tyreek or Jalen Waddle getting free. And that completely changes what you can do on offense and how you need to respond on defense. So looking at them as an example, sure, those are special players. They have way more than just speed. But the speed that they do possess creates so much more opportunity for that offense, for their quarterback, even though he can't access that part of the field as well as a Justin Herbert. Having that speed on the field does matter because speed means separation. And speed means also big playability. And that's something that the Dolphins have in stride. They also have Raheem Mostert too, right? Man, that's a really fast running back to add on top of that. Big speed team. And it's really paying off for Miami. Now, Justin Herbert, if he were to have access to tools like these, right? Just think about it. Herbert's a hell of a quarterback. But he can only do so much with his receivers lacking any sort of speed. When I'm saying the Chargers need speed, it's not because, we lack or we're in the middle of the pack in terms of speed. No, it's bad in terms of speed. Justin Herbert's top 3 wide receivers as of today average a 40 time of a 4.53. A 4.53. I know DeAndre Carter is close to a sub 4.4. I think he's a 4.44, literally a 4.44. And that's the fastest wide receiver on the roster. At this point, you could contend, Gerald Everett is one of the fastest receivers on the team as of today, our tight end. This is not good. There's no opportunity to stretch the defense, to stretch the field for Justin Herbert, and that's really taking a toll on his play this season. Yes, DeAndre Carter, decently fast, but not a burner. And we only got the one guy. I feel like if the Chargers added 2 receivers, not just one, and they don't have to be big names here, 2 receivers, they could find a formula reminiscent of his rookie season, right? With Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson. Those guys weren't really big names back then, especially Jalen Guyton, who had turned out to be a pretty decent receiver going forward. It was because of Justin Herbert and what Herbert was able to do with those receivers that made them a threat. And that's why Tyron Johnson didn't work out wherever else he went, because he needed that Justin Herbert factor. The threat of a speed receiver is multiplied tenfold when your quarterback can reach that part of the field. And we know Justin Herbert can access that part of the field and utilize it, and he's going to pull the trigger. As of right now, the Chargers, they're just giving opponents no reason to back off the line of scrimmage. They can play as close as they want, because what are we going to do? Even if, Michael Bandy, bless his heart, right? Very talented wide receiver. Even if he does get his hands on the ball, that guy has like a 4.62 speed. He's not going to break away. And that also does come into play in terms of his separation. Despite his speed, he does a really good job at that. Still, there's really no reason to back off for Michael Bandy or to back off for Josh Palmer. Those guys don't have the speed to respect that kind of defensive coverage. And so long as Herbert is restricted to short and intermediate passes, the offense will continue to struggle because it's so predictable. And a simple, cheap trade could have remedied this. This is why Chargers fans were upset during the trade deadline. We could have maybe gotten Denzel Mims for a 6th-round pick. Not even kidding. Nelson Aguilar for a 6th-round pick. I know he's not everybody's favorite, but the dude's fast. Paris Campbell out of the Indianapolis Colts. We probably could have got that guy for a 7th-round pick. Now, yes, there were bolder trades on the table, too. I don't know if the Chargers would have pulled the trigger on any of these, but, Tony, who went to the Chiefs for a 3rd-round pick. Claypool for a 2nd. We were all pulling for Elijah Moore. I would have given up a 3rd-round pick for that guy. I mean, you can even talk me into a 2nd-round pick. But again, we don't need superstars out there. We just need that speed. We need something to get defenses to respect the deep ball. Back off so we can run the ball and pass more efficiently underneath. We need something to stretch the field. And you pair Herbert with, any one of these guys. you will find these players elevated. You will find these players working to what the Chargers so desperately lack right now. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, Denzel Mims, not the best wide receiver, but I think he would have been good enough. Nelson Aguilar, not the best wide receiver, but he could have been good enough. You pair that with Justin Herbert, he's going to elevate those players without a doubt, especially now that you've got the speed matching up with the tools of the distance on the throws, with the throw power there. It's a big deal not having that speed on this roster. And again, defense are going to take advantage of that. Opponents will take advantage of that. We must get Herbert, especially in terms of our star quarterback and how he's developing right now with not having any speed on the field, always dink and dunking. We have to get Herbert to transition himself out of the dink and dunk mentality. And you can't do that without speed on the field. But ultimately, and again, I feel extremely passionate about this take. I feel just a few signings for a speed wide receiver could really have turned this team around. And that's why we were so disappointed on Tuesday. Because to me, this offense, this is the issue, right? Not the defense. Our defense is in an okay spot, is what I would say. They would be borderline great with Bosa back, and they might be when he returns. But the offense is giving the defense nothing to work with right now, right? Third downs are a travesty. Fourth downs are a trap shoot. We used to be excited about those, but it feels like personnel decisions is kind of wiping away our odds there. Scoring has become a huge issue. And if you can't move the ball, our defense will face an uphill battle every single drive. But if you can score, if you can force your opponent into a deficit, the entire game changes. The Chargers owe it to their defense to right this wrong. We have got to get the offense back on track. Can you guys imagine? Like, again, the defense hasn't been terrible, but they haven't been that great because of the situations, in my opinion, that they've been put into. What if the Chargers offense was decent, right? If they were decent, if they weren't facing the defenses they've been facing, if they were moving the ball, if they were converting third downs, what would that do for the defense? It would do quite a bit. And if that energy could be matched just a little bit on offense, I feel like this team could pull themselves out of the hole. And again, I feel like they owe it to their defense to right this wrong. But lastly, and again, I won't get too far into this, I am disappointed that Chargers didn't make a coaching change during the bye week. Now, I get it. Joe Lombardi could bounce back, and honestly, I truly hope that he does, because it sounds like we're sticking with him through the long haul here. But right now, the offense has just been so bad that this was one of the moves I hoped, that I felt was necessary going into the bye. Even if we didn't trade for anybody or sign anybody big, I would have at least felt a little optimistic with the team if they had elevated Shane Day to offensive coordinator. Because that would have told me, hey, the team's mentality is such. Hey, man, we got to get Justin Herbert and this passing offense back on track. We got to stop forcing a regression by dink and dunking with the Joe Lombardi system and try and unleash the Justin Herbert system built by Shane Day. And who better, to give that responsibility to than the man who knows Herbert better than anybody in Shane Day, the quarterback's coach right now. I felt like that was a decent plan. And again, I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not an X's and O's guy, but that just kind of made sense to me with how bad Joe Lombardi's offense has been so far this season. But instead, I'm led to believe that this short passing scheme is going to return in Week 9, and it's just not going to work. The Falcons are going to see it coming from a mile away, and it's going to be bad news bears for the Chargers and this offense continuing going forward without any sort of adjustment through the bye week, which again, one of the more important bye weeks I've seen in a very, very long time. So it's tough out there, man. I know that the bye week wasn't what we hoped it would be, both in terms of recovering players, the Keenan Allen thing, gutting, right? The trading stuff, gutting, just everything did not turn out the way we hoped. But it doesn't mean that all hope is lost, okay? The Chargers, they still have moves that they can make. They still have adjustments that they can make eternally, that may be elevating somebody with the speed or finding a way to, adjust the coaching. There are ways the Chargers can make this work. Again, they're a 4-3 team. They got the whole season in front of them. It's not lost yet. Now, one of the biggest things that I did want to cover in this video, of course, I think it's going to be in the title this week as well, is some big news. We're going to call this segment Big News Cooking. Now that we've talked about a lot of the disappointments, let's start lifting ourselves up a little bit in terms of maybe a shred of optimism, what the team can do going forward. So let's highlight this storyline, which again kind of blew up Twitter this morning. Brandin Cooks is extremely upset, very upset, that he wasn't traded before the deadline on Tuesday. And he publicly spoke out about this, man, and it's actually looking pretty serious. We're not blowing smoke here. He's already committed to missing tonight's game versus the Eagles for personal reasons, and that's a huge deal regarding his contract going forward. Let's take a look at this tweet. Don't take a man's kindness for granted. Covered for the lies for too long. Those days are gone. Crossed the line with playing with my career. Brandin Cooks is deadly serious. about doing something about this situation. Sure, it can be remedied with a conversation, but right now, with him committing to missing tonight's game, that is a huge deal. Keep that detail in the back of your brain. Okay, missing tonight's game, that's a big deal. Now, why wasn't Brandin Cooks traded? Well, I feel that the biggest reason likely was because he had an $18 million price tag attached to him. And now it's sounding like the Texans ludicrously wanted like a second and fourth round pick for him. Nobody was going to do that. That's too much money and too much capital. And this is why the Chargers, in my opinion, were not buyers here. I don't think they ever were with that kind of price tag. We're broke right now, right? We're not broke, but we don't have all the money in the world to pull off a trade like that. But again, after missing tonight's game, something big could happen. Now, after digging a little bit into the situation, I found a quote by NBC Sports, okay? And this is in regards to his contract. Under his contract, a copy of which PFT has obtained, the guaranteed salary for 2023 becomes null and void if Cooks commits a default. Use the specific terms of the contract. Now, what this basically means is that Brandin Cooks is taking a tremendous risk here in missing tonight's game, a big one. Because if he does something to null and void his contract, that means that $18 million, poof, piss in the wind. It's gone. And you know what? The Texans could release Cooks without any dead cap penalty at all. So why would Cooks do this, right? It makes no sense to miss tonight's game because he is risking that $18 million. Well, it seems that he is very deadly serious about getting out of Houston. And if he's released, he'll become a free agent, free of cap responsibilities for whatever team decides to sign him. And before anybody says he won't make it to us once he hits waivers, like, you know, there's going to be another team that pounces on it. This is not the case with Brandin Cooks, okay? Yes, most players that are cut are subject to waivers. But veterans cut with 4 years of NFL service are not subject to waivers at all. Instead, they immediately become unrestricted free agents. So Brandin Cooks, if he's released, he can go play wherever he wants. And what this has created is what? The perfect storm in terms of maybe a crazy acquisition in the middle of the season for the Chargers. And it's going to be one that the Bolts will be crazy not to take advantage of. Now, this could provide an extremely comfortable situation for the Chargers to add a speed wide receiver here in the middle of the season, like we were talking about. And ultimately, a second chance for the team to make right the mistake of staying put during the bye week. Would the Bolts do it? Let's say Brandin Cooks does miss tonight's game. Let's say the Texans do want to save $18 million in 2023, so they do release him, voided the $18 million, and Brandin Cooks tries to go on to greener pastures. Would the Chargers even do it? Yeah, I absolutely think they would. I think there's a very decent chance of it, as a matter of fact, especially given that he's got connections to Joe Lombardi and playing with New Orleans a couple years back. Big need, big fit. He is 30 years old, but that means a short commitment to Brandin Cooks. I don't know, man. It just feels like the odds would be for the Chargers to go after this guy. But if the Chargers don't move on this, let's say they literally don't move the needle, don't even pick up the phone, I don't know what to tell you guys. Cooks would be served up on a silver platter at this point. You don't see situations like this too often. To not make a move on it would be a huge mistake, in my opinion. So what I'm trying to say with this Cooks development, okay, because we don't know what's going on. What I'm trying to say is that if Cooks doesn't play tonight, if he does indeed miss tonight's game, we need to keep an eye out on Twitter. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at the director _YT. We need to keep an eye out for developing news on Brandin Cooks, because $18 million off the books for the rebuilding Texans, that's an extremely likely outcome if Brandin Cooks does break the terms of his contract. And again, we don't know the full terms of that contract, but it's something to definitely monitor. And again, I'm just some dude on YouTube. Who am I? But last month on the 23rd, I did post this. Don't know why, but I've never really given up on the thought of Cooks to the Chargers. Feels like he should be playing in powder blue. And this was even at the moment that I knew the Chargers wouldn't go after him because of the cap responsibilities. Now, with this perfect storm brewing, you never know what could happen. Don't get your hopes up too high. He's going to be a very, high commodity among the, the free agent market. He can go play wherever he wants. I think the Cowboys have been mentioned a couple of times too. But the Chargers would be a great situation for him, great situation for us, and one that the Chargers should really aggressively pursue if he does become available. All right. Other moves that can still be made if you are the Los Angeles Chargers as well at this point of the season. If you're trying to right the wrongs, go after a wide receiver. There's still free agents out there, right? Odell Beckham Jr. I think Will Fuller, some people mentioned that he may be retired. I'm still seeing him available as a free agent. And then, of course, a guy like John Ross, too, who does have the speed, even if he does lack in other abilities in terms of his play. These are just moves that you have to make. You got to go out there and get a wide receiver. Maybe they didn't go trade for a guy because they've already gotten pretty serious about obtaining Odell Beckham Jr. They want to make the money fit. Who knows? Who knows? But at this point, you just got to go get somebody. Even if Keenan and Mike come back in the next couple of weeks, there's no guarantees that both or even either one will stay healthy. To have the kind of insurance you need, especially with a position where you're lacking speed, like, again, a guy like Will Fuller or John Ross, they would likely stay on the roster a while because they have something that the Chargers really, really need on the roster. Make a move that makes sense. Again, that's why I was so big on the Denzel Mims idea, because he's not a featured wide receiver, but he brings that Jalen Guyton factor, of which the Chargers really need right now. So to close out this video, guys, what's my confidence on this team going forward after all of the things that have happened, the injuries, the decisions or the lack thereof? How is the director feeling about the Chargers? Well, it's tough out here right now, man. I know Chargers fans out there everywhere are feeling it. And if I'm being honest, I have softened quite a bit, and I think for good reason. I feel like we're a fringe playoff team at this point, which, again, it doesn't mean the season's over. It's far from over, but we are not that team that we thought we were at the top of the season. We've fallen significantly. Again, at the top of the season, I felt like we were a legit Super Bowl team with the kind of roster that we put together. After the injuries and the lack of coaching, I feel like I've adjusted my predictions from a floor of 11-6 down to 9-8. And that's pretty gutting, given, all of the excitement that this team built during the offseason. But you know what? When it comes to us, the fans, the best thing that we can do right now, let's just have some fun with it, right? Because now I view us as the scrappy team going forward, right? Not all hope is lost. Sit back, have fun watching the games. Let's all hope together. But we're going to have to fight for every inch going forward. That much is very clear to me, unless we do go out there and make some big moves. But just like before, I still do feel like we're a few moves away on offense to getting this team back on track. And if you can get that offense back on track with some speed to get the defense to respect, the deep part of the field and open things up for your quarterback and your running game, I feel like this defense is already, especially with Joey Bosa coming back, up to the task of helping salvage the later half of this season. This Chargers team, still the second best in the AFC West behind the Chiefs, still have a great shot in AFC, or I should say a wild card spot in the playoffs. I do firmly believe that the Chargers are still in it to win it, but they're going to have to make some big moves. Be bold, be brave. If opportunities present themselves like Brandin Cooks, you have to be one of the first to pounce on it to get this season back on track, fellas. So you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Hang in there, Bolt fam. I know it's been a tough ride, but I do think not all hope is lost, but let's be cautious going forward. I think the team, they'll still be a fun one to watch if they can sort a couple of things out. Well, hit us up on your way out with a like and sub if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. I swear to God, if Brandin Cooks is released, we need to be the first team on the phone.